Hi, it's Makaela here. Thanks for listening to my podcast. What you're about to listen to is an old episode of my podcast, The Midlife Awakening, which has now been replaced with the Deliberately Transformed Woman podcast. You'll still find some golden takeaways in these old episodes, but if you're the type of person who wants to discover and let go of the things that are holding you back in life by busting through fear and procrastination, overcoming imposter syndrome, and stepping into a life that is fulfilling, courageous, and intentional, then my new podcast episodes, starting from episode 21, are the ones you're looking for. You're listening to episode 18 of the Midlife Awakening podcast with Makaela Moore. Welcome to the Midlife Awakening podcast. I'm Makaela Moore, your host and certified transformation coach. I'm a 40-something woman who nerds out on brain science and believes every woman should be financially independent. This podcast is for women navigating their midlife who want to learn the secrets to unlocking their brain and freeing themselves from everything that holds them back so they can create lasting change in their lives, because everything is possible. Join me each week for conversations about the midlife and tips and tricks to hack your subconscious brain so you can deliberately transform your life and ultimately create your own financial security. First time here? Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Enjoy! Hello everybody and welcome back. I am so glad you are here. So last week I talked about stories and how we live our lives based on the stories that we do or don't hold in our subconscious. And I gave the example of a 16-year-old teen sensation who doesn't seem to be held back by any limiting beliefs or stories, or at least not when it comes to entertaining thousands of people on stage and millions on her YouTube channel. Being born to a dance mum who took her on a journey from her very young years, going on several reality TV shows, etc., she was most certainly told from a young age that she could do it all. She was introduced to entertaining from the moment she was born, and she has basically known nothing else. Which is why at the age of 16, she can own a stage and entertain thousands with such confidence. But that obviously is not the reality for the majority of us. Most of us are born into relatively mundane lives in comparison and fed stories of growing up, finishing school, maybe going to university, getting a job, get married, buy a house, have kids, work till the age of 60 or 65, and then retire on a pension and savings. Most of us are not taught to really aim for the stars when it comes to planning out our life. I know I wasn't, and I was barely encouraged to participate in sports, let alone aim high for any sort of life goals. And here we are in our midlife, which I was asked the other day, how old do you have to be in your midlife? And to be honest, there is no age. It's like asking how long a piece of string is. You know, in my mind, the midlife is basically that sort of time between around 35 to 55-ish. And, you know, it's a weird time in a woman's life because, you know, she's in most cases finished her baby making years. You know, some might still have kids at home. Others are becoming empty nesters as their kids move out. Or if you're like me, I had my first child, or my only child, of course, 3 months before I turned 40. You know, and that's just a different ball game again. So, you know, while we're all at different stages in terms of our family and our parenting life cycles, I find that most of us are now looking towards something more for our lives. We're no longer satisfied with that status quo. We are not prepared to settle for a mundane life of general routine and standard jobs that provide minimal flexibility. We want more for ourselves, for our families, and our life. And so we start searching for more meaning in our life. Except we have no idea what we are searching for in most cases. We try to remember what it was that we once dreamed for our life. What did we really want for ourselves before we got swallowed up by all the parenting and the household responsibilities? And then we remembered that one dream, you know the one. You were probably a teenager and you didn't know what life beyond that held for you. There was a moment when you were younger when you did think you could achieve something big, but then things got in the way of that. It was tucked away and likely forgotten. The things that got in the way of that dream were probably a mixture of your circumstances, like family responsibilities, etc., and your mindset. The fear and resistance kicked in and just told you flat out that you couldn't do that and that that dream wasn't for you. And you have believed that ever since. And perhaps at this stage of your life, that dream is no longer relevant or of interest to you. That's fine. But what do you want now? Remembering that anything is actually possible, because as my coach says, everything is 100% possible 100% of the time. So with the world as your oyster, you need to work on figuring out what it is you actually want. This can be things that you want to do in life, like your bucket list, things that you want to achieve, health goals, fitness goals, where you want to live, the quality of life that you want to create for yourself, the people that you will or don't want to have in your life, travel goals, dream holidays, boundaries, things you will or won't allow or accept in your life, the quality of food you eat, environmental and sustainability activities that you might want to do, the atmosphere or environment that you want to create for you and your family, career, business, sports achievement, financial goals. The list on what you want to do with your life is endless, and it is not just about what sort of job or business that you should create, which is the first thought for so many people when they're asked what they want to do with their life. I am all about making the most of our time on this planet as humans, and for me, learning and personal development is a huge part of that. I am always reading and learning and taking courses and upskilling. Along the way, as you know, I've developed a love of psychology and brain science, and the more I learn, the more I realize that we humans are literally going through life with our eyes closed. We're these magical cosmic beings having this human experience. We are born not realizing that we have all the potential that we will ever need right here inside each of us. But we allow other people to tell us what we can and can't do in life. We allow other people to control us at times. We allow our subconscious beliefs, stories, and patterns to manage our life and to stop us from doing what we really want to do or what we really dream of. And so often we don't even allow ourselves to dream because we don't want to be disappointed or get upset that we can't have it. But who says we can't have what we want? In most cases, it's our subconscious brain, our very own brain. But in other cases, we do allow other people to influence or dictate our life outcomes. But we are 100% responsible for everything we do or don't have in our lives. Everything we do or don't have in our life has been our choice. I am going to talk more about choices and circumstances in the coming weeks, but just know that we have a choice in everything and we are the only ones in charge of our own life. We just need to reprogram our subconscious brain to realize and believe that too. Now, if you listened to my last episode, you'll know that I talked about the fact that we can actually do whatever we want. We are just letting the stories and the beliefs hold us back. Our possibilities are limitless and we can do whatever we set our mind to. But how do you know what this is going to be? How do you find out what you actually want? Well, only you can answer that, but I'm going to give you a simple process to get started on discovering what you do really want for and from your time here on Earth. Now, before we get into that, I just want to remind you of that time you spat your coffee out all over me when I suggested in my last episode that you take up public speaking or start your own business. When we are faced with a new possibility, we immediately experience fear and resistance to it. In that moment, your brain went into fear and resistance, and all the subconscious beliefs and stories that you've gathered throughout your life all came up in a nanosecond, and you immediately thought of all the reasons why you couldn't or shouldn't do it. So as you go through this vision and clarity exercise to discover and plan out what you want to create in your life, remember that fear and resistance are going to try and block you at every turn. Every time you have an idea for doing something, they'll give you 1,000 reasons why you can't do it. So the key to doing this exercise is to dream really, really, really big, almost like you already know these things are impossible, but you're going to write them down and dream about them anyway. And by telling your brain that these things are impossible, just while you're doing this exercise and planning it all out, you're in fact tricking your brain. Because if your brain sees you thinking, oh, that's impossible, it's not even going to bother putting up resistance because you've already done that for your brain. So it gives you the opportunity to plan everything out, to think big and dream big without the fear and resistance getting in the way of the planning. Now, I only want you thinking these things are impossible for just a moment, just long enough to get your big fat dream down on paper. And then I want you thinking that it is totally possible for you, and you just now have to figure out how. And trust me, when you start believing these things are actually possible for you, some magic actually happens in your brain. And the more you start thinking about these things in terms of having already achieved them and visualizing them, a magical process happens in your brain whereby your brain actually starts helping you to create that dream and that vision as a reality. So I have created a PDF that goes along with this podcast episode for you, which will help you with this exercise. So just head on over to www.makaelamore.com/clarity or head to the show notes to download it. I want you to start thinking about all the things you've ever wanted or dreamed of, and do not let your age, your current family circumstances, your current health or financial position influence this list. A trap that so many of us fall into is thinking that because we're a certain age, like in our 40s or 50s or beyond, that we've left it too late to do so many things in life. We just assume we've left things too late in life, but seriously, what do we know before we turn 40? Not as much as we do once we're in our 40s. And if our bodies didn't fail us with age, would anything really hold us back? Think about that. We've been programmed to accept much less than we deserve in life, and it's through doing all this inner work that we get to create the results in our external world. We can also get into the habit of judging other people for having or doing what they want. And just because someone else was there first does not mean you can't do or have what they're doing or having. By judging or begrudging them for what they have, we're effectively telling our brain that we can't have it because someone else has it and that we're not deserving of it. So by judging others when we don't have whatever it is for ourselves, our subconscious brain then creates our reality based not on what we really want, but the mixed messages of whether we perceive that we're good enough or deserving enough or as good as the other person who has it. It is a cycle that can really keep us stuck in life because we allow our stories, beliefs, and fears to control our actions, and this then reinforces the messages in our subconscious brain. So the more you judge others or think that something is out of your reach, the more your brain will seek evidence to prove that you are right, and you end up trapped in a cycle. So remember, when you're thinking about and you're writing out your big vision, make it big, make it bold, make it ballsy, and pretend that it is impossible and you're just dreaming, so that you can trick your brain into not kicking into that mode of fear and resistance. Don't overthink this exercise either. Just because you write it down doesn't mean you have to do it. But unless you get it down on paper to get clear about what you do and don't want in your life and for your life, you won't have clarity. I'm not going to go through all the questions here in the podcast, but head on over to www.makaelamore.com/clarity or go to the show notes and you can download your free Vision and Clarity questionnaire to get you started on your way to knowing what you really want for and from this one great life here on earth. Once you've listed out all the things that you do and don't want, I want you to then write down reasons why you can't do or have it in your life. Also write down what's the worst thing that could happen if you actually achieved the goal. What would happen if you failed? If the goal is impossible for you right now, who do you have to be in order to make the dream goal a reality? You'll find all these questions inside the free Vision and Clarity exercise download. This is just a preview of the whole exercise that I get my coaching clients to go through in order to help create their vision of the future. Next week, as a natural progression from last week and this week, I'm going to talk about procrastination and self-sabotage and explain why we get into them and how we can work towards getting out of them. Each week for the next few weeks, as I lead into the launch of my next free program, Transformation Awaits, and then into my paid program, Transformation Begins, which are both in February, I'll be taking you through some of the topics that we cover in those programs. So if you're interested in signing up for my free program, just head on over to makaelamore.com/transformation. You can sign up there, and I'll also pop a link to that in the show notes. So that is all from me this week. Have fun creating your big, bold, scary future vision. I promise you're going to start thinking differently once you do this exercise. And if you have any questions about the vision exercise here in the podcast, please hop on over to my Facebook group, Deliberately Transformed with Makaela Moore, and I'll happily answer your questions in there. Thanks for listening. I'll chat to you next week. Bye for now. And that, my beautiful friends, is another episode of the Midlife Awakening. If you'd like more inspiration or to connect with other midlifers, head on over to my Facebook group, Deliberately Transformed. You'll find the link in the show notes. Until next time, cheers.